Michelle, this is a pretty big deal that this is our first Leo movie that we're doing.
Wow. Is that really true?
This is true. Who have we repeated throughout the
Everyone.
last three seasons?
Everyone,
Everyone?
including a couple actors who appear in this movie.
Yeah, so we have done zero Leo movies, but this is our third Tom Hanks film,
Yep.
or second, third. Okay, wow. He has been represented in every season except for the Christmas season where Rita was represented.
Yep.
So
Someone from the Hanks clan. Oh, well, do we want to apologize to Leo? Like where do you fall on the Leo?
where do I fall on the Leo scale? I
Yeah.
feel like artistically, love all his films. I feel like in the last 10 years, I've lost love for Leo just because he dates younger women.
hmm
But
And you're no longer you've now surpassed the age in which he only dates people if they're what is the statistic? Once they
I think it's like
turned 28.
21. I thought it was like 21, 24. So, which is very ironic because in this movie, it's flip-flopped where he's a 17-year-old and he's dating much older women and getting married to much older women. So
Oh.
it's a little bit of a time machine reverse for Leo in this movie.
So maybe after this, it was all in rebellion of his experience with Catch Me If You Can. He's like, you know
I
what?
guess
This
so.
is not what I want out of my life.
No, but on the Leo scale, I mean, he's great in everything. This movie, I don't know how old he was when this movie was filmed, but he definitely looks older than a teen,
hmm
you know? Like I don't like this whole movie, I really see him as in his 20s.
Yeah, even though he looks so young and compared to how he looks now, he absolutely does not look like a teenager. And that was one of the notes I wrote down was that in the scenes that he's in with Amy Adams, I don't know if this was intentional or it's just the way I was perceiving it. I did feel like he kind of looked younger because I think
Yeah.
her energy was so young in this role for her. But otherwise, yeah, I kind of felt like this is just a guy in his early 20s.
I feel like his transition of from when he ran away to start conning people, he just very quickly came off more as an adult, though. Do you know
hmm
what I mean? Like we were so thrown into this high schooler, and maybe he was like a little bit of an older soul because he had some trickery in his school days as well. But I was like, wow, it's a fast adjustment for him.
Do you have a favorite Leo movie? And is this it?
I think this is it for sure. Maybe it's just because of when I was born and the movies that all the Leo movies I've seen. I mean, in the last couple years, I've seen Wolf of Wall Street so many times, and that's obviously such a prominent movie for him in the, last 10 years or so. It took him all the way to have to sleep inside of an animal for him to win the Oscars with The Revenant, which I truthfully watched when Dom and I were on a trip to Vermont in a hotel room, and it was like freezing out. So we just stayed and watched a movie, and I slept the whole time.
Did you watch it inside of like an animal carcass?
I did not. You would think because it was Vermont that I would be bundled up. But other than that, yeah, I mean Titanic is always going to be such a tender moment for him. I mean, talk about young. He's like a full baby in that movie. I don't think I really started having a deeper connection with that movie or saw it a lot until I was a little bit older. And this movie, my first actual memory of seeing this movie, we saw it together with our family friends in New York City, where, this movie starts off in Frank's life, which I thought was kind of cool. And we saw it around the holidays. I think it was after Christmas in a movie theater in New York. But I was old. I think I was under 13 when I mean, what movie
Yeah,
this
I think I
2002?
was in yeah, I was in college, so yeah, so you must have been 9
Yeah. But
and I was
we went and
19.
saw this as a family. So, I mean, I guess mom and dad, you know, released their reins a little bit on letting me see PG-13 movies when I was under the age. I just had seen this movie so much growing up that it really became kind of like my big Leo moment. What about you?
I feel like I need to revisit. I don't have a list in front of me of all of his movies, but the one I've probably seen the most because Jimmy really likes it is The Departed, and I think that he's excellent in that. I would almost argue maybe his peak. I know that he
Yeah.
didn't win the Oscar for that, but I felt like that was a really good role for him. But I guess I haven't seen Wolf of Wall Street, so maybe
You
it's
would not
that.
like it.
No, and that's why I haven't. I think you specifically said like, Michelle, just don't see it.
Yeah, it's just not for you.
Yeah.
It's like one of those plane movies that you're like, I can't believe people are watching this on a plane right now. It's a little, I would say it's a little too crude, but not in like a fun way for
Mm-hmm.
that you would enjoy it. I definitely for our generation, I'm sure that's a lot of people's favorite Leo movie.
Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah, for sure. What about Titanic for you? Because that was
Yeah, Titanic
such a
was like
cultural
it
moment.
was, and I was in. I think I was a freshman in high school when that came out, and everyone was in love with him, and because everyone was in love with him, and everyone wanted to see Titanic, of course, I'm like, I don't like him, and I'm not seeing Titanic. So I still to this day have never seen all of Titanic. I've seen the first tape of the two tape set, but I still have not seen the second half of the movie. I mean,
You do hate boats.
yeah, I get seasick.
I
I
think
don't
you
think that's
might
the
get,
reason why. And,
I don't know.
now looking back on it, like, I love historical movies, and I feel like I shouldn't have been stubborn and just enjoyed it for what it was at the time when it was made. But now I kind of feel like I've already thrown away that opportunity and there's no going back. So it is what it is. I missed the
I think
boat.
you still have I think you still have time if we wanted to get Leo on more of this podcast. This could be our opening.
It could be, but I have another Leo movie that I would love to revisit and cover because I only saw it once, but I feel like it's the movie that I should like the most, which is Gatsby.
Yes, I have not seen that enough. I think I've seen the full thing start to finish once.
Yeah, I saw it in
And
the
I
movies.
love the book.
Yeah.
I think most people read it in high school English class, but absolutely love the book. I would love to reread the book and then watch the movie.
Okay, so maybe that'll have to go in a like book to movie season or a we need to revisit this season.
Or movies with lavish parties.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot.
All right, Michelle, what did we see this movie together? Was this your first time seeing it with me when we saw
Yes.
it in the movies? Okay.
Yeah, the thing that I remember most about that experience is just how much I loved the opening credits. And I know that we've mentioned these credits before in another episode, but I think because I had just started college and I was a graphic design major, I was really extra in tune to that sort of thing when it came to watching movies. So that's the only thing that I like really remember other than the details of us going as a family and it being over the Christmas holidays. How about you? Is there anything else prominent that you remember about that
No, I
experience?
don't know why, but I just remember that day so much. Like I remember like going to lunch and being bundled in a coat and watching the whole and loving the movie. I do remember sitting in the movie theater and like being like bundled in a coat from like outside and just look, I remember the theater that we were
Yeah.
in. It was in Midtown, so it wasn't like a tiny theater. I think there were, I don't remember it being crowded by any means, but it's pretty rare that I'll remember seeing a movie for the first time and remembering all the little details of it.
I think one of the reasons it stands out for both of us is this is not something that we typically did. We very rarely went to the movies. I would say like our family of six, like our parents and our sisters, all of us going to the movies at once has happened what, two, three times, and this was
Yeah.
one of them.
Yeah, it was, I mean, there's a lot of us. It was usually broken up. Like a
Yeah.
couple of us were going and it was usually at the mall and not in New York City.
Yeah. Beyond seeing this in the movies, you've alluded to the fact that you've seen this movie a bunch of times. Was this another one of those it's on TV all the time movies for you and you just kind of watched it like parts of it if you
I
flip the
think
channel on?
both. I think both it always being on TV and we had the DVD. So this was probably a car trip movie where we had our portable DVD player and I put it on. I don't have even memories of probably like individual memories of me sitting down and watch it. I just would always watch it.
Wow, I missed out on that too. I never got
Yeah.
to do the DVD in the car experience.
It's not too late for you.
It's not. I could buy one or see if mom still has our
Yeah.
old one. I have seen this movie several times, but I don't think I've seen it nearly as many times as you have. So I'm going to lean on you for your expertise for details I might be overlooking or forgetting, even though I did.
Yeah.
We both just did rewatch this.
Yeah. So what was it like for you this time around? Did you enjoy it as much as you remember enjoying it in the past?
I enjoyed it, but I'd say I enjoyed it as much as I expected that I would, which is like medium.
Mm-hmm.
That
Okay.
was kind of like my I wasn't blown away by anything. I wasn't like, I need to start watching this more often. I don't want to say that I don't go as far as to say that I don't like the movie, but I'm realizing now just in compiling my notes, I may have more bad things to say about it than good.
Okay. That's fair. I think I have a pretty neutral opinion just because I've seen it so many times. Like, yes, my favorite Leo movie just because I think his performance is fantastic, but this isn't a very feel good movie. I would say this isn't a movie. It just comes to show how dark my mind is because I love sad movies and it makes sense that I would go back and watch this, or if it was on TV, I would just automatically turn it on. But definitely not a feel good movie.
Yeah, I guess that is the biggest thing that surprised me is even though I haven't seen Catch Me If You Can in maybe like 15 plus years, they created a Broadway show from Catch Me If You Can. I unfortunately never got the chance to see it, but I have listened to the soundtrack a bunch. And, you know, as a Broadway show does, I think in my mind, this is like a very colorful, lively kind of story. And Mark Scheiman, who did the music for Catch Me If You Can, the musical, also did the music for Hairspray. So to kind of give you, Laura, an idea of like the style of the songs in the show, it's they definitely take I think just in listening to it, like kind of a brighter approach to it. So I think having that in my head combined with the thing that was most memorable from Catch Me If You Can, which is the credits, I don't feel like the rest of the movie matches that tone at all.
Well, it's weird that you're saying Hairspray because it's not, I would say there's pops of color, but so much of the way that this movie is shot, like artistically, is, I would say, a lot more like dull tones with light coming through. Like, it's not a very like colorful movie.
No, and
It's
I actually have a note that says, "Why is everything so smoky?"
very smoky with light shining through windows, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I wouldn't use the word like shadowy. It just kind of it seems like the kind of movie that has been living in a smoker's home. There's just this little
Yeah.
bit of like gray mist
But I don't
over
know,
everything.
maybe it's bringing forward the fact that it's kind of like smoke and mirrors, like where like he is really you can't really see like the full picture of things. The way that we meet Frank and all of his different personas, he's really like tricking people, right?
Hmm.
So it's kind of like not what meets the eye, and there's a lot of like mystery and like fog in like who he is as a character.
Do you think that it was intentional that this movie was supposed to kind of have some of these elements of like this kind of like bright 60s vibe, but also mixed in with the reality of the situation? Or, and this is kind of how I'm leaning, I'm kind of blaming like the marketing people on this. I feel like this movie was maybe marketed again, like between the credits, the poster, Leo kind of still being like very new and shiny at this point, being this kind of like fun and fanciful kind of movie, but that's really not what it is. And I haven't watched the trailer, but I suspect that there is a prominent cut in the trailer where Leo is looping arms with the stewardesses
Oh
when they're
yeah, or
like,
like at the pool. I'm sure they use a lot of the bright scenes, and I mean, the opening scene is extremely dark. It's of him in a jail in France and he's sick. So it's not, I mean, also this movie is based on a book about the real person's life. So when you're going off of that, especially in true like Spielberg tones, like I think that I'm sure wanted to stay true to a lot of those words. So kind of creating that environment, I'm sure was important to him as creating something that's like enticing to draw people in. That's like a feel good movie. But I don't know, some people really like enjoy darker films. So I guess from what I'm understanding, you're getting at, it was like marketed incorrectly or like kind of lured you in under false pretenses of
that
what
is
you may have not expected. And just
exactly it.
knowing you and what the types of movies you like, which is fair. I mean, there's definitely supposed to be an element of surprise when you go and see a film, but like I am the type of person who doesn't like seeing trailers or I love a trailer, but I try not to read anything before I go into a movie. I like being completely surprised, so I don't form any opinions beforehand and I just can kind of be thrown in. But sometimes I like to know like the tone that I'm going into. So if I'm like, oh, this is going to be a really happy movie and then it's a horror film, that could be really off-putting for me. Or like vice versa, like why was this like a joyful film when I thought it was supposed to be, be about something completely different. So I think it's more so understanding like the genre that you're going into beforehand. If you don't mind, I don't know if we need to cut this in, but can I watch the trailer? Because I am
Yeah,
just
yeah.
curious now.
Can you share your screen so we could watch it
Yeah.
together?
Okay, so probably everything that you just described is accurate.
Well, same. What
Definitely.
you just said too.
Yeah, I think especially the music, the color inclusion, like there's no hints that there's a lot of dark moments in this
Well,
movie.
there is. I felt like this trailer started off going one way where we had all like the brightness and the colors and like the fun 60s stuff. And then it kind of like took a little bit of a turn and we see Christopher Walken for the first time. We start seeing like blurred lines and it started when Tom Hanks's character said like you have no one else to call and it was like,
Yeah, that's
oh,
such a
okay,
powerful scene.
this
Yeah.
this took a turn. And then at the end it was just like chaotic. So I mean I guess that kind of encompasses
Yeah. But
everything,
I don't
but
know. I think it's like the music in the background and
I forgot that song's not in the movie, is it?
no. No,
Okay,
not at all. Leah Michelle does it better.
much better.
Just saying. I would be interested to hear the audience reaction to them playing that trailer or like the sentiment that they were getting from people because I'm sure a lot of people didn't know the true story
Hmm.
of this person or had read the book before. I mean, I'm sure it sold well, but I certainly didn't know who this person was.
All right, so I feel like we're kind of going into this discussion with a mixed bag, but let's kick off our segment around the things that we did like about it, because I do think that we have quite a few things to
Oh,
discuss
yes,
here.
definitely. All right. Well, I want to hear from you first because you haven't seen this in so long.
Broadly speaking, I think the strongest thing to come out of this movie is the acting. Leo is great. Tom Hanks is great as he is in everything. And Amy Adams is great. But to me, the winner is Christopher Walken. I thought that he was fantastic. And when I was having that thought throughout the entire movie, I didn't realize that he was either nominated or won an Academy Award for this movie. Can we fact check this on the spot?
I think he was nominated.
Okay.
So,
Well-deserved nomination. I don't know who he was up against or whether or not he should have won or not, but he was the most interesting character to me. But it wasn't just that. I truly think that Walken's performance in this movie made it more interesting. It was kind of like a complex role to play, and I feel like I wish I could be more eloquent about this, but I feel like he just absolutely nailed it.
But I do feel like I love Tom Hanks in this movie so much. Like, I just think he plays that role so well, kind of that like authority figure with some weird accent. And yeah, he just like got the job done. Do you know what I mean? Like, he knew his assignment and he showed up and he did it well. Like, it didn't even feel like that was a difficult role for him to play. It was so effortless for him.
I was cracking up because I read something that said that Spielberg was afraid to ask Tom Hanks to play this role because he thought it might be too small for him because it wasn't like the starring role. And
But
I was,
it pretty much is.
it
I mean, it's
is,
the
it
whole
is.
movie is Leo versus Tom.
But what made me crack up was like everything that we know about Tom Hanks. This is his dream role. I feel like all they had to do is be like, Tom, do you want this part? You'll get to wear these glasses. And he's like, yeah, when do we
And this
start
hat.
shooting?
Yeah, and just being able to have his like ongoing posse of other agents. Yeah, but then beyond that, I mean, Leo is so strong in this movie. He has to wear truly so many different hats, which is so enjoyable, I think, at least for me to watch too. Feels like you're watching like a million different movies.
This movie gives those three actors specifically the chance to do the things that they're the best at. So Leo, I think, is just a fantastic actor and he could do anything and he gets to do so many different things in this. Tom Hanks, this is like a quintessential Tom Hanks role. And I think it's something that the audience enjoys seeing him in a role like that. And I think that you can just see how much he loves playing this character. I'd be curious to see if we can find somewhere if Tom Hanks ever shares like what is his favorite character that he's played, because I feel like this has to be toward the top
I
of it. It
know. I
combines
would
so
hope
many
it would
things
be
that
up there.
like that he's about. Like I know that he loves this era, and I think playing this kind of like, obscure, from my research and not based on a real person, even though, Frank is a real person, but I think
I
he's
think
kind of
it
like
is,
like a
but it's
composite of
definitely,
like different
yeah.
people, which is misleading because at the end it says something like Frank and Carl remains like friends for the rest of their life, which I kind of wish that they didn't put in there, because to say that it's like based on a true story but then to have something like not factual to like end it with, it's just a small gripe.
You made me think of this by saying favorite character. Back to Leo for a second. Of all of the roles that Frank plays in this movie, what are some of kind of like your favorite moments of pretending to be other people?
I want to make sure I'm thinking of all of them. So there's the pilot, the lawyer, the doctor. Are there others other than those three?
The only one that just came to mind for me, which is very subtle because it's before he runs away, but when he's the teacher, I just find that entire sequence very funny of him, very aha moment for him like getting bullied and then pretending to be a substitute. And then the fact that he's pretending to be a substitute for 2 weeks is so funny,
I
so
love
creative. And
that.
it just sets the tone of like he's just who he is and that he's able to get away with this before we see everything that he gets into after that.
That's a good pick.
And he gets that. I mean, it's so obvious that he just gets that persona from his dad, being able to kind of woo people and trick people into doing certain things. So,
It's also interesting that if I were to say to you, like, Laura, you need to pretend to be these four professions, I feel like trying to pull off being a teacher and, only really having to interact mostly with kids and not with adults would probably be the easiest thing to get away with. So I like that they kind of like started with that because it felt believable that he could graduate into some of these like harder to pull off, like leading up to being a lawyer without having a law degree and being a doctor, having to operate on
yeah,
people.
so terrifying. Yeah, and I also always enjoyed the when he is pretending to be someone writing a piece for a school paper because there's so much innocence in it, but he's, acting so nerdy just to like do a little bit of recon work, which I just love. What else? What works like really well for you? I know surprisingly wasn't, a super enjoyable film for you to watch, but anything else that you really enjoyed?
I also, before we like turn away from the characters, I love that they cast a French actress to play the mom. That felt really one of the most authentic parts of the movie, I guess, because it was, and I thought that actress was great. Let me look at my notes. Oh man, I feel bad. I feel like most of these are like, in reflecting on them, are all right. Here's one.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't realize how
This
much
is like
I had to.
this is like the Notebook all over
It
again, but
is. It
worse.
is. Except I didn't have the awareness of how much it's. Here's the thing. I don't think that like I completely dislike this movie in the way that I didn't like The Notebook, but I have more things that I didn't like about it than things that I liked. I thought the set design was also excellent, particularly his childhood home and then apartment. I wanted to pause to catch all of those little details. It definitely brought me back to our grandparents' house. I think a lot of people our age, like their grandparents' houses, still kind of had these like remnants of the 60s, maybe like an ashtray or a couch that was covered in that, very like 60s fabric. And I felt very much like I've been in a house like that before, or I've been in an apartment like that before. And even though, most everything had this like layer of smoke over it, I mean, that's kind of how it was at that time. And even when I was really little, people were still smoking inside. So that also, yeah, felt very like true to me.
Just speaks volumes to the work of the production design on this movie, but the little details, not just in his own homes, but where he's off to and all of his different adventures. I always really, really appreciate when he's living in, I think it's California. This is the first time that Frank and Carl meet, and they do a couple different shots of the ketchup sitting on the table, or just like, just kind of giving you a glimpse into what his life had been like for the past, couple months of him residing there. And I just thought it was such a beautiful, maybe not beautiful, but almost messy extension of a teenager on the run and hopping from state to state, hotel to hotel, and acting kind of gross.
Yeah.
But, being able to play into that with the details, they did such a good job.
Neither of us like exposition, but I did like the way that it kind of opens with this game show scenario where they were able to, in case you were going into this movie like knowing nothing, they kind of spell it all out for you. Like, here's the deal with this guy. And I think if that had not really happened in real life, because the real Frank did go on, it was some kind of
I'm
like,
not sure.
it was some kind
Yeah.
of like dating game show where they would kind of like give descriptions of like three different people and you had to like guess which one was telling the truth or something like that. Maybe dating wasn't involved.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was some kind of game show that Frank Abagnale Jr. was actually on. And I felt like that was a great, fun way to kick off the movie and let everyone be really clear about what we were jumping into, like from the beginning, because things do get a little confusing as we go on because we start, switching back and forth in time, and the movie is really long. So for me, and for a movie like this that was I think intended to be an all audiences kind of movie, and not just saying that because our whole family went to go see it as a group, but I do think as having Spielberg and Leo and Tom Hanks attached to it at this time, I feel like they needed that exposition at the beginning so that the general public had an idea of what was going to be happening.
It's interesting that exposition can have a couple different categories. It's kind of like flat out just doing a voiceover and telling the audience something so they don't need to explain it or show it. But in a way, this opening was eloquent. It was able to tell us kind of everything we needed to know with one line. And I think it went so much further than them showing Frank either in the jail or when he's 17 and living at home, and just having Carl's voiceover or someone's voiceover being like, this is Frank. He's stole $1.3 million. Like they took us into such a different setting that you never would have thought of. I mean, again, like you mentioned, if the real Frank Abagnale had been on a game show, they got the inspiration from that. But that took someone doing research and like whether or not it was in the book to pull that setting out and then put it as part of the movie.
And another scene where I feel like they kind of used this where it worked well was the scene where Carl, Tom Hanks's character, is kind of like explaining how bank fraud works, and he's kind of, I think he's giving a like a presentation to his team or his coworkers, and you know, I think most of us going into this movie like don't understand how that works. We needed that explanation, but it felt true to the movie and to the character that he would have to explain that to his team. And I think that the way that they cut it was like he was explaining it, but we were also seeing Leo doing it. And I felt like that was one of the more successful parts of the movie.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of kind of satisfying inclusions of him being a con man. Of I always love the sequence of him figuring out that he can forge these checks and taking the Pan Am sticker and using the bathtub. It's so creative. I think like to think it to work in that business at that time before they had computers and probably a lot of sophisticated programs to figure out if people were doing anything fraudulent. Like everything was definitely a lot more manual back then. I've always liked those scenes of seeing how he did it and got away with it. So that's it. That's all you got. I'm surprised that, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, with there are visually appealing moments that aren't smoky or dark, but the outfits
Oh,
of
yeah. Okay.
everyone in the movie, I would say I love his mom's
Love the mom.
classiness. I also love like the nurses' outfits. I'm like, why can't we wear that like as just an outfit today? I feel like people kind of are. All of like the retro bathing suits, the scene where he's doing the like the pilot program with the flight attendants. I feel like everyone with like their retro glasses and cool outfits. And then beyond that, everything that he wears in this when he's kind of pulling off his different characters. I love, especially the one with a tropical one where he's in kind of like an orange sweater outfit and he has like his hair slicked back. Or maybe that's when I think he goes to the hospital and meets Amy Adams for the first time, but it's just very visually appealing for me.
Not that this has to do with costumes at all, but one other scene that I liked, and I like that they kind of like brought this back. So they show a scene in the beginning of Frank's parents. They're dancing to the song Embraceable You. And then he sees Brenda, Amy Adams' parents. I don't even know if they're dancing to it or they're just washing dishes together and that same song is on.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. I never even noticed that.
Yeah.
The same song.
So I love that kind of like contrast of you kind of in that moment realize and see that like this is why he has, in a way, like of all the roles that he's playing, like just trying to be like someone's son and be part of a family is like the con that he doesn't even know that he's trying to pull off.
Oh, that's a deep cut. I know, because even when he's doing that, I remember he calls Carl and is like, I want to stop, like, please, like, I just like want like a normal life, which I think adds some complexity to his character.
I wish that overall the tone of this entire movie was a little bit more like sneaky, because I feel like that would kind of be the happy
More
medium.
of a heist.
Yeah, maybe like more of a like heist, which would kind of be in between this like bright and colorful 60s movie and this like what is really like a dark and depressing story.
I think I'm more so drawn in by Leo's characters and just, kind of trying to put yourself in his shoes of how absurd it is. And I like the complexity of people being people and just wanting love and belonging at the end of the day. I mean, that was, I would say, most of his motivations, right? He periodically meets Christopher Walken's character and is so badly just wants to show his dad that he wants him to be proud of him and what he's doing. And that's why he's going at absurd lengths to make money. So maybe he can, get him a car to impress his mom. Like he just wants love and belonging and acknowledgement. And I think I like that human aspect of it.
I did, as much as it depressed me, I don't think that I really understood that that's what this movie was about until I just watched it now. I'm like, oh, this is a movie about someone who is doing all of these things because he wants his parents to get back together and he wants to have a family.
Again, as depressing as this concept was, I think it was a very heartbreaking and interesting inclusion to have his mom kind of go off and start a new life with someone else and have a kid and not really be concerned about where he is. He's 17 years old and he's off on his own. But I think that was a strong inclusion in the movie.
Do you think that the story that Frank's dad told about meeting his mom was the true story?
Maybe not the whole truth.
Yeah, and I know that like I'm pretty sure she was there when he was telling it, so she wasn't refuting it, but knowing what we know about his character and how he is kind of a little bit of a, of like a swindler and like a storyteller, the way that he describes their love and their marriage clearly was not the same on her end. At least,
Well,
what we saw in this in this part of their story.
I think that a lot of her motivations are stability and money
Mm-hmm.
because she starts off so happy they're living in this house. And it's the thing that's a little spooky is, and maybe it's just the houses of the time and living in the suburbs, but the house that they introduce us to them as a family in looks exactly the same as the house that she
Yeah.
ends up in with her new family. And I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it's kind of like she got back to where she always wanted to be, if not more.
And maybe that was kind of the whole reason that she got together with him in the first place, is because it did
Oh
kind of
yeah.
feel like opportunistic. Like, here is this like American guy who's going to give me the American dream. And she was fine with that until that changed.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know. Maybe I do feel a little similar to you in the way, whether or not I realized it. Like, I also don't have a laundry list of things that I disliked, but I think maybe this is like a safe movie for me because I've seen it so many times, but I would say it's not a movie that I turn to when I'm trying to be in a good mood.
Okay, so you kind of have the like the nostalgic attachment to it, like because it's
hmm
comfortable but not comforting.
And I think creatively, I think it's a very wonderful movie. It's just not as much as of an escapism movie. Michelle, since you have so many strong opinions about this, let's hear what you did not like about this movie.
Okay, I'm going, instead of just jumping in and getting really negative, I will pose this as a question for you so we can have a discussion about it. What did you think about the structure of this movie?
I thought it jumped around too much. I love movies that have any inclusion of Europe in it. And I actually would have liked to see more of it. We're, especially at the end, we're kind of just thrown into him around Christmas time in this factory, which is a very depressing scene. And we don't really, he's traveling around Europe and maybe it was for budget purposes, but we don't really get to see that at all. And all of the scenes in Europe are him in jail, like coughing. And I don't know. I don't really know what I would have changed. Like I understand creatively why they may have done that to kind of like I always appreciate a contrast of like who we're introduced to, this young kid in high school to someone who has long hair and is in a French jail and has kind of reached, the end of their adventures, as we may call it. But I think I almost would have appreciated them just getting to that point over the course of many years instead of jumping back and forth. Like, I think also the scene of him when he's on the plane and Frank is taking him back from the French jail and, he starts crying because he finds out that his father died. Like, I think just showing it in order, I would have enjoyed more. I don't think it really took too much away for me, but I think the structure was a little bit jumpy.
I completely agree. I see what you're saying about like the contrast, and that's nice, but I don't feel like it added anything to this movie, especially since we got that great setup at the beginning with the game show where they're like, here's like the log line for the movie. Here's what it's about. We don't also need to have this like, here's where things are going to end up. Like, we kind of already know that. So they kind of like, they said it twice. And then anytime they cut back, it just felt like they're just doing this to try to make it interesting, but it's already an interesting story. I don't think it was necessary, and I think the movie could have been just as good just telling it in a linear fashion.
Just showing like kind of the point that he gets to is interesting to me, but also if they had just kind of ended with him getting arrested outside of the factory may have, been enough for me.
Yeah. I would say overall the movie felt like it was a little long, but maybe just cutting all those scenes out would have brought it to a length that felt right. I remember feeling like it was long from the first time that we saw it in the theater.
The length doesn't really bother me for this one.
Hmm.
I don't know why. Like, I'm not like tapping my foot waiting for it to end, but I think it's just because it's Leo and I can't. I would never want him to rush through a movie because he just has like so much to show us.
That's true. He does have to do a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
But the whole story at the end with him going to work with Carl it just felt a little bit off. I feel like because they were making this a more like all audiences kind of movie, I wanted the ending to feel a little bit more uplifting than it did. It didn't like they tried to give that sentence at the very end, like they were friends for the rest of their lives, and like he shows back up to work even though he, escapes again when he's working for Carl. But I was still like, I am not like this does not end on a happy note for me. I still feel sad.
What note would you want it to end on then?
I think maybe having him come in and help Carl maybe like catch a guy who is just like him instead of it being like I don't know, just those scenes in the office felt very depressing to me. Like it didn't seem like it was a good thing that he was there. It felt like he was back in jail.
I think it just would have been nice showing him like 10 years down the road, like with a family, and then he's just kind of in like a stable
Yeah.
life. He was able to kind of like grow from this experience, but he wasn't like tied to needing to catch people.
Yeah, I think I read that decision at the end for him to, once he started working with Carl, to then like escape and leave temporarily, as this is part of who he is just this guy who's always trying to get away with stuff, which I didn't read was the true character. The true character was really just like this little boy who was trying to bring his family back together. But once, his dad passed away and he saw that his mom had a new family, I kind of feel like he would have like let go of that idea of wanting to, like, he didn't really have a motivation to do that anymore other than it just being like a habit at that point. But I didn't feel like he was doing it for long enough that it was like this lasting thing that he had to keep going and seeing what he could get away with.
I understand where you're coming from. I think beyond that, the only other thing I had written down was the bloody leg.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That
Scene
poor
always
little
grossed me
boy.
out. Yeah, I know. But I think as we kind of started at the top, and I know this is like based on a true story, which I need to have some commentary on based on a random New York Post article that I pulled up the other day. It's borderline discussing that this is like a 17-year-old boy, like, having relationships with like much older women because he's so young. Some of it didn't feel authentic. Like it didn't feel like a 17-year-old would be doing that or being able to get away with that. And I know it's like Hollywood and gets to sleep with the movie star. I don't know. It just felt a little icky to me, I guess. I think a lot of things in the book are not true. Like I think that the person fabricated a lot of the things to make a story of it, and he apparently admitted that, but I think a lot of people thought that no, this was like the true story. But in a way, it's like, are we dumb? Like obviously I mean, he's a liar. Like he's a con man, so he could be lying about a lot of these facts and we wouldn't really know unless they're able to like fact check with Amy Adams' real parents. Yeah, I think those are some things that didn't sit with me well, but I also don't really know how they could have changed it besides him just like not sleeping with multiple women in their late 20s. Like, I don't know. Very like of the time, like early 2000s, needing to have like your quote on sex scenes.
That was absolutely like my least favorite scene was particularly the scene where he sleeps with Jennifer Garner. And I was just thinking like, okay, I can see them having this scene in there to like put in the trailer, which we just saw was in the trailer, but it felt like a repeat of the scene that he already had with Ellen Pompeo's character, who was the flight attendant. We're like, okay, we get it. He's going to have the opportunity now to like, sleep with women that real women, not like girls from high school. It kind of felt like cheap and unnecessary to have that. Jennifer Garner, I really did not like her in that role. And I think that she's a great actress, but it really took me out of it. And I think another way of doing a scene like that for me that would have worked better would be to have a really quick like succession of him like falling into bed with like, okay, the stewardess, the person from the bank, but just like really quick cuts instead of having these like long drawn out like conversations. It felt too much like a repeat to me.
And I just think it's like borderline controversial.
I don't think that I see it as problematic, I guess, because he's a guy.
No, I don't know. I think it is though, because it's like the thing is like these women didn't know, so he's tricking them.
Yes.
But like, yeah, it just like, I mean, I would hope that almost in all these situations, if these women had known, they wouldn't have like taken.
Yes.
He's like in a way being taken advantage of, but not intentionally. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think he's just like young and confused and needs like guidance and nurturing. Like
yeah, they're being deceived. Not they don't just think that he is a good-looking guy. They think that he is a pilot and they think that he's like this, like a wealthy guy. So I can see the problematicness of these women not being privy to like the situation that they're actually in.
Yeah.
And them not
exactly.
like having a say in that. Icky. Yeah.
Icky.
We'll have to bring this discussion back up again if we ever cover the movie Big, which I feel like is like such a...
Oh, it's another one, but it's under some crazy circumstances. But yeah, that's definitely a weird one.
All right, what else? All right, I mentioned earlier the score. I mean, like, how can I say something bad about John Williams, a legend, but... yeah, just didn't work for me in this movie. At times it felt a little too fanciful. At times I felt like I was watching, like, I don't know, like Home Alone or like a Harry Potter movie. I did like, there's one little like run that I think, Laura, you were kind of like singing before, which is kind of like with the bass, which is kind of, I guess, would be the main theme of the movie. And like that works, but everything else feels really out of place for me.
That's fair. What were some of your favorite songs?
Come Fly With Me is one that sticks out.
That's kind of like the iconic moment, though.
Maybe that's it. I mean, I feel like I've kind of been like weaving the other things I didn't like into our conversation, but I think the big things were the Jennifer Garner scene, the structure, the music, and the false pretense that this movie was marketed as.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. All right, well, maybe we can get into some positive aspects. Do you have a favorite line or favorite scene?
As cheesy as it is, my favorite scene is probably right after he leaves Brenda and kind of like goes back to being a pilot. And I think it's because they're playing Come Fly With Me. And it's really kind of like cheeky and funny. And I don't know, a part of me wonders, did he actually enjoy being a pilot? Like, he chose to go back to that. He could have gone back home, he could have turned himself in, he could have made a bunch of different decisions. He could have picked a new profession or a new part of the country or went somewhere else in the world, but he chose to go back to being a pilot
But I think he did that because it was a way for him to easily jet everywhere.
to get away again.
Yeah. Like he used that profession to his advantage to run or fly.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I liked that scene. Independent of the movie, I liked just that scene as a standalone.
Any favorite lines?
Yeah, I only have one. My favorite line is when he is confessing to Brenda who he really
Oh my
is, and
God, are you gonna have the same one as me? That's so amazing. 'Cause I
he
only have one written down.
he goes through all the ways that he's deceived her, and she goes,
You're not
"You're
Lutheran?
not a Lutheran." Yeah. Oh, I love that we had the same one, and then we only have one.
And it's like almost a 2 hours and 2.5 hours or so.
Yeah.
So yeah, I also had I said the Frank Sinatra flyaway scene. Great. I also love a couple of subtle scenes, and maybe this plays into set design and flexing creativity, but I love, and it kind of plays into an aspect you don't like of it because it's the contrast of like these two characters' lives. But I love the scene of Carl at the laundromat because there's a lot of like comedy in that where someone leaves like a red sweater and he's just like so miserable and like hates his life, and you could see why he gravitates towards work because he's just trying to like kind of fill this void. But they contrast it with Frank like sleeping with a movie star and just like kind of shows where they are in life. And I just always find that scene very funny that he's like sitting in between these two like old women at the laundromat. One of the more, I would say, probably memorable scenes for people who've seen this movie a lot is when Frank gets lunch with his dad for the first time
Mm.
after he's kind of run away. And I appreciated this even more because I read that Christopher Walken kind of just went off script in that scene where he gets emotional, which just is amazing because he's a great actor that he was able to really draw us in with that emotion. But I just love the line along with that scene where he says, I took the train here, Frank. I'm taking the train home. And I think for a lot of people, that's such like a parent thing to say of kind of just being like set in your ways and being very humble in your beginnings and not feeling like you can like accept something greater that someone's offering to you. And I think it just ties a little bit more into his complexity of like he learned all these things from his dad, but his dad, I think at the end of the day, is just kind of like a simple man who just kind of like wants to work and like have a life. And he's like a schmoozer, but I feel like he's also such like an honest person.
He has good intentions. I do really think that he does love his wife. I don't think that that was an act at
Oh
all.
yeah.
Yeah, oh, I'm glad you brought that scene up because if I had to pick a more serious scene, or if I were submitting this movie for an Oscar, I would probably pick that one. It felt really real. I mean, it kind of sums up the whole point of the movie. You kind of see where all of Frank's motivations are and see this struggle between, like a parent and a kid, which is something that I think all of us have experienced like some version of, and that, kind of heartbreak and, a parent always wanting like the best for their kid and like loving them unconditionally. And yet the kid, I know you mentioned like the dad not being able to like receive what Frank is trying to give him, but like it kind of goes both ways. Like both parties are always trying to like win the other person over, and the other person is also at the same time unwilling to like accept that extra bit of love from the other.
I always kind of wondered, and I understand like that he just kind of ran away. There wouldn't be a story without this, but like I think he would have gone and lived with his dad, and he would have just like kept going to school. Like it always felt off to me that the parents like didn't they didn't do anything. They just kind of let him go,
Mm-hmm. And it
you
also
know.
felt like that decision was just kind of made on a whim. That he was just like, I need
I
to get out of
always liked
here.
that sequence though. I always enjoyed like I thought that was a very creative way to do it of him just like running, you
I like
know.
that. I like running in movies,
Yeah.
even if it's
Running in movies
cheesy.
is always great. We didn't talk too much about this part of his life. I know we talked a little bit about him drawn towards a family and settling down, but I always enjoyed those scenes with Brenda and her parents because it again, it felt very human and familiar of we talked a little bit about this, I think, in a recent episode of like us meeting our significant other families for the first time and feeling very at home. And even though like I think it takes place in the South, so it's probably like unfamiliar territory from him, like coming from a big city. And there were these kind of like uncomfortable moments where he's not religious, he doesn't like, the songs that they listen to at night, and there's a little bit of awkwardness in it, yet he feels so safe and like wants to give up everything to be there. And I really like that dinner scene, where the dad's like testing him a little bit but you can just tell like he feels nurtured.
I don't have a solution of how they could have done it another way, but this movie also felt like fragmented at parts, and like the whole thing with like Brenda's family and the fact that they have Amy Adams and they have Martin Sheen in those roles, and then having them only in that like very small section of the movie. I don't know. I have mixed feelings on it because I also hate in movies when they like, because they have a big actor, they like shoehorn them into parts of the other parts of the movie that they don't belong in. But while this is like such a great premise for a movie, there are so many like good smaller stories within it. I'm wondering if maybe it just would have been more successful as a show.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, as a long movie, like they could have drawn it out where it's like every chapter was like him as a different persona.
Mm-hmm. I guess we'll have to write it.
Guess so.
Add it to
Add
the
it to our
list.
list. Okay, so let's talk about what did this movie make you want to eat?
So many things. This was a good food movie.
It was a good
Finally.
food movie, although I don't really have much written down.
Oh, well, I will throw some food items your way and jog your memory. I think the number one thing that this movie made me want to eat was Chinese food, but I think that's anytime it shows up in a movie
When
or
were
you
they
see
eating
those
Chinese food?
cartons. I think Carl was eating it at
Okay,
Christmas in the
okay.
office when
Yes.
he calls, and the other
Mm-hmm.
people are also eating it.
Oh, now I'm gonna want like lo mein.
Yeah, lo mein, like specifically,
Yeah.
is what I wanted.
Yes.
What else? Peanut butter, because that's one of the big clues that Carl has, that like I think that he's dealing with a kid. When I think it's when he's in that Palm Springs apartment, it's one of the things that's like on the tray. And I know there are so many, like as you mentioned earlier, like little items and little clues, but I think peanut butter is one of the prominent
Yeah.
objects.
I never really like, I think I've had like hotel room service like twice in my life, but like just the idea of like calling up like a plate of fries and a Coke like in bed.
Mm,
I think just because like the bottle of ketchup probably in that same scene with the peanut butter like made me just want to be like room service. Can I have like some fries and a Coca-Cola?
yes. Oh, that sounds good. And I feel like we kind of missed out on the ordering room service
Yeah, I mean, I get
era.
it. It's definitely not like good quality and it was always like so expensive. I've always kind of wanted to do that.
It's not like I've done it recently, and it's like it's not the service that it once was. Like maybe if you stay at like a really nice, first of all, most hotels don't have it at all,
Yeah.
but even like the really nice ones, it's like such a limited menu, and it's not like, where the guy comes and like sets up the whole spread, which I have had before, and that's great, but it just doesn't. A lot of times there's like, here's a box of food, and it's like, all right,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
this
It's a
I'd
little
rather
like
get Uber
old
Eats.
timey being
Yeah.
like servant, like come bring me breakfast in bed. But I don't know. I like the idea of like having just like a coffee and like some pastries brought up to you. That would be nice.
That would be
You
nice.
know, just if you're having like a lazy morning.
All right, other food
Wait,
items.
I have a question for
Yeah.
you. What is a Sara Lee cake?
Oh, I had that written down. I thought it
Okay,
was like
I
a
don't know what that is.
Sara Lee's a brand.
Oh, okay. So it's like
Remember
boxed cake.
Howard Weinstein's line? This
Oh,
also comes in a lovely
Sara
Sara
Lee
Lee
yellow.
yellow. Yeah, that was
All right, I
like in
gotta look this
reference to
up.
like a Sara Lee. It's like a manufactured dessert, like that you can
Okay,
get
I
in a
know that
supermarket.
brand. That's disappointing to me though, because I feel like a mom coming, like someone coming from France, like you would think that she has probably like her own recipes. Like we're even introduced to her mom at some point, and I don't mean to generalize. I'm genuinely saying this as like I would just expect that like in those scenes, like she's like, oh, I just like made, whipped this up or something, or like had this like ready. Like I think that would have been like stronger than her being like, let me get some like boxed cake.
Maybe that was like our kind of
Maybe that was like the
indication
thing.
no, but maybe that was our indication that she really wanted to be American. That's why
Yeah,
she got
that's true.
married. That's what she
Yeah.
was chasing. And Sara Lee cake is like, especially at
Yeah.
that time, I feel like very in that vein of like, living the American dream.
I don't really like processed cakes.
No, me
Like
either.
I
Of
want the
course
real
not.
deal,
Especially if you
you
come
know?
from France, what a waste.
I know. Oh my God. Come on. Give me those pastries.
All right, how about the fondue and champagne party at the pool?
I think there's so much going on in that scene and it's very exciting. Like I'm too focused on like the pool and the drinking and the
Oh
music.
no,
Like I didn't even like
I would have
I
been
kind of
just right at the
overlooked.
fondue.
I'm not a big fondue person.
I'm
I
not
gotta
either, but
say.
like it seems like such a fun thing to do. And like if I was at a party, I would much rather like hang out in front of the fondue than like be frolicking in the pool.
So, like chocolate fondue or cheese fondue?
I'm not really much of a cheese person, but I think I would pick cheese fondue over chocolate fondue.
I'm canceling fondue. It's like,
This is so surprising. I feel like you would own a fondue pot, so I should return the one I
mm,
got for you for
you
your
should definitely return the
engagement.
one. Yeah. Go get me some boxed Sara Lee cake instead. I think I had cheese fondue. It was weird. Another time I was in Vermont. I don't know why I'm having all these Vermont memories this episode, but yeah, and I just remember it being like pretty sharp cheese. And this was like the early days of Dom and I dating. I think it was like the first trip we went on, so like I didn't want to like sound like bitchy, but he could like tell. He's like, you don't like fondue. I was like, no, it's good. It's good. It was like too sharp of a cheese. And I think this is another reason why I don't like love it, which I think would be more of an explanation for you. It's kind of messy.
It is.
It's just like
It's also like you
I
have to
just
be okay
want
with
like
like
the cheese.
communal dipping and all that. I mean,
It's not even that. It's like, why does it need to be like pouring out of a machine? You know, like even chocolate fondue. I'm like, eh.
yeah, chocolate fondue I could do with that. I'm not a big like chocolate
I
covered
don't also
strawberries
think that
person.
the machine isn't very like visually appealing either. I think I just associate it with like maybe like one of those QVC commercials of being like, and now your chocolate fondue fountain, and like moms use it once and then it sits in a
Yeah.
box. So I'm sorry. Champagne, obviously, we'll say yes to. I mean, champagne is like it just goes with Leo movies. So Titanic, Gatsby,
Well,
this, like,
Gatsby, the iconic GIF,
yeah, yes,
one of my
such a good gift. We
favorites.
do use that a lot. That's a good one. All right. So, what are we going to do for our dinner party this week?
What if we have a dinner party with Frank's parents and Brenda's parents?
I like this. Where are we having this dinner party, though? And it's just the two of them, not Brendan
Brenda
and
and
Frank.
Frank
Okay.
Jr. are not there.
Okay.
No. I want to see
Okay.
how they're going to
Okay. How
react to
this
all this.
unfolds. Okay.
Is the premise for this that this is all out on the open and this is the parents meeting for the first time, a la the Mackenzies and the
Mhm.
Bankses?
Definitely meeting for the first time.
Okay.
First and only time.
Okay. So
Like
who's
Christopher Walken and his wife hadn't seen each other, but they're going to this dinner to like
okay.
show face.
Okay, but they're not together. Okay.
No.
I feel like that's an important factor here.
Yeah.
Even though they don't really have the money to do so, I think that they would be more likely to fly to the south than for Brenda's parents to trek
Mhm.
up to New York.
Yeah, so why don't we have it? They have a pretty big house.
Yeah.
They stay over for the weekend, do a little bit meet the parents action,
Yeah.
and they're having a dinner. Um, all right. I'm thinking they're not really doing like an appetizer spread. I think that they're just getting right into dinner and maybe doing like a southern spread.
A southern
Some
spread.
southern, but I feel like Frank's mom, like she needs wine, like as soon as she sits down. But like they bring out maybe like a white wine, or they're trying to like or they're trying to impress her with some champagne, and she's like very like she's offended because she's like, this is awful. Frank's dad is into it. He's chatting it up. He's schmoozing. He's getting a little
Yeah, we got a couple of
boozed up.
schmoozers. Yeah.
Got a couple of schmoozers in the room. And then for dinner, I don't know why I'm going towards like a casserole because I just feel like casseroles were very big at this time. Maybe like a green bean casserole.
I love green bean casserole. It's funny that you jumped to casserole because I was kind of thinking that they would be trying to make them feel at home and make something that seemed very like New York. I don't know why I was thinking like a lasagna, but that
But I
wouldn't be
feel like they
good.
wouldn't even know what that
That's
is.
true. That's a good point. That's a good point. Okay,
Like
so
they weren't like Googling like what do they eat in New York City?
yeah. Okay. All right. So let's go with they've put what did you say? They put champagne out. The mom's
Yeah.
not into it. Do you think that she requests? I feel like she's someone who would be like, actually, do you have some red
Just
wine?
have
I
a
might have.
Yeah, or maybe she's like, can I just have a glass of white wine? And they're like, we got you this expensive, champagne. Yes, maybe like a glass of like she's like, can I have a chilled glass of white wine?
Mm, okay.
And they're scrambling because they were not prepared for this.
And what are the rest of them drinking?
I think that they're all having champagne and then after dinner, like Christopher Walken and I keep forgetting Brenda's dad's name, but I feel like they're having like scotch after dinner.
Yeah.
They're going into like his oak office and having a drink to talk about the kids.
So we have the green bean casserole. What else is going on this table? We need some other southern staples. I don't even
Yeah.
remember like what they had at the dinner that Frank was at.
I don't know why, and I know we've used this so many times, but I genuinely picture them like bringing out like a full turkey. I don't know
Yeah,
why.
yeah.
Like a big meat dish that they have to like carve for them, whether it's like a ham or like a chicken,
I
like a
think a turkey
roasted
works
chicken.
good.
And then I genuinely think that they probably are just having some like mashed potatoes.
Of course. I was going to say the same thing. I mean, not
Yeah.
to be basic, but like, how can you not have mashed potatoes with this?
And I could see like Christopher Walken being like very overly gracious for this meal that they had, and the mom being like, I just want to go home and like eat my Sara Lee cake.
Yeah, because she's kind of, I can see her being very almost like envious, like, because these people have like a better version of what she has had.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Maybe some cornbread involved
Mm-hmm.
because
Butter.
you gotta carb it up. Lots of melted butter. For dessert, they're definitely serving some like coffee,
Mm-hmm. In
you know,
saucers,
and
saucers, coffee.
saucers. Yeah. And
Not Sara Lee cake, though.
maybe Sara Lee cake because Frank like told Brenda that his mom like loves Sara Lee cake and he's like, if you just want to keep her happy, like just bring that out.
Okay.
So like they have it, but like I also think that Brenda's mom like makes another dessert
A hummingbird
because
cake, because that's a very like southern.
the hell is a hummingbird cake?
Oh, you don't know about the hummingbird cake?
I gotta look this up.
Look it up.
You out of, what was the other one we said?
Baked Alaska.
Ooh, is
Hummingbird
this like
cake
is this
has,
like a carrot cake
I think it has
situation?
banana
It's a
and
banana
pineapple
pineapple spice cake.
with cream cheese frosting.
Interesting.
I think
I'm into
Lisa has
this.
made one before.
Of course she has. It looks to me very much like a carrot cake, but
It's in the
instead it's
carrot
like
cake family.
pineapple. This sounds great.
And I
Sounds
think,
like a nice dinner
yeah,
party.
I think you're totally spot on with Christopher Walken. I think he eats everything, both cakes, all the wine, and with everything that he accepts says like how wonderful it is and how
Yeah, and I
happy
feel
he
like he's
is.
like talking to Brenda's dad a lot about how he went to school. He was like going to be a doctor.
Mhm,
He was
yes.
like, I was going to be a doctor, decided it wasn't for me, so I started my own business.
I think, in the end, because that Sara Lee cake came out, that even Frank's mom is happy.
Oh
I think it
yeah,
was a successful meal.
definitely.